Morning. I'm Dr. Petra. Welcome to the CSLDallas Science of Mind class. I am so happy that you're joining us today. We are in the first full chapter of the book, and we have been talking about how this whole thing got started. We're in the chapter In the Beginning, God, and we're on the section, The Story of Creation Simplified, right? Because, of course, everybody has a creation story. The only problem with this creation story, which is the same as pretty much every other creation story, is that it anthropomorphizes God, as if God were a being, and it just makes me wild that it still says he, as if God were a man, a big Superman in the sky somehow, deciding what is going on. And so I noticed as we were going through it last time and continuing to look at it this time that I don't like it. I don't like the description. And good enough, right? We don't take the Science Mind textbook as if it is the gospel or as if it is somehow such sacred writing that you can't disagree with it, because there's a number of things that I disagree with, and that's how we grow. And that's how we mature, and that's what we mean by our philosophy being open at the top, because we're constantly growing in our understanding of the nature of reality, of who we are, and how this whole thing works, which means that our understanding and our ability to describe and talk about what's going on should actually be evolving. It's not that we're adding anything new per se, it's that we are deepening and broadening our understanding. So we're going to talk about the creation story a little differently this morning. I'll give you a sneak peek into my classes. I do a metaphysical interpretation of the scripture that we call the Bible, because we live in a Judeo-Christian culture, and our New Thought philosophy comes out of that culture with a healthy dose of the Eastern traditions, science, philosophy, and psychology mixed into it. But we are, and all the writings come out of the Judeo-Christian culture. And so fundamentally our creation stories, our religious creation stories, come out of the Bible. And otherwise we have scientific creation stories, or perhaps we have creation stories that come out of another tradition that we have grown up with. So there's two creation stories in the what's called the Old Testament, which is based on the Hebrew Bible, and we're gonna take a metaphysical look at the creation stories, and we're gonna hopefully do it without anthropomorphizing or thinking about it as we're simply going to see if we can't explore it a little differently. So you may not know there are two creation stories. The first creation story is about the Garden of Eden, and the second creation story is about the creation of the universe. The second creation story, which creates the universe, is actually the older of the two creation stories, and it always seems a little weird that it's second in the way these writings were ultimately put together. But we're going to look at the second creation story, and it is the creation story where we get and God said it was good, that everything was good. So we have in the beginning. In the beginning, who knows the creation story? What was the very first thing that in the beginning there was? The Word. That is in the New Testament. That's John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and was God, and the Word was made flesh. No, you've jumped us. You've jumped us thousands of years into the future, and that's in the Gospel of John. So back in the creation story, in the beginning, God said, let there be light. Right. Let there be light. Right? And what we know from our scientific understanding of the universe, what happened? There was a big bang, right? And there were first subatomic particles made, and I don't remember now exactly the order, in the first 3 seconds, and then in the next minute, and there's whatever, helium, and at some point in the very, very, very short following the Big Bang, does anybody know? Light. Photons of light. Photons of light. Okay, in the beginning, there was light. And so the second part of the creation story is, God said, it is good. Everything, it is good. Over and over and over again, it is good. So I got my handy dandy little Bible out here. And if you are interested, I use the Oxford, what do I use? I use the New Oxford Annotated Bible with the Apocrypha, Expanded Edition, Revised Standard Version. What does that mean? That means that there are a whole boatload of translations and versions before this one, but this one is fabulous because there's lots and lots and lots and lots of historical information. So this is the one that I use. Now, see, I can't even read it. Okay, so in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and the darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved and said, let there be light. This is actually the beginning. This is the very beginning. Let there be light. Okay. And God called the light day and the darkness night, which we will actually see is not is not completely true. And then God created the firmament. Any idea what the firmament is? And separated.
Solid stuff.
I think now, having done a lot of work with all of this, I think you're exactly right. I think this is the substance, right? Which I think would be the quantum field. Right? This is the substance. Firmament. It's something, but it's not anything yet. Right? It's not anything yet. I should have brought my glasses down. Sorry, you guys. Let there be firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. So we have not only light up, but we also have waters. And so there's waters above and below this firmament, and the waters are separated by this firmament. And it was so. God called this heaven and this earth. So what's above substance? Not yet substance. We might call this the absolute. This earth, physical creation, the universe, right? That which is below substance or is separated by this undescribed something. So now, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together. Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together, and let the dry land appear. So we have dry land. Oh, I don't have blue. We'll make the waters red. So we have dry land and water. That's my water. Don't I draw beautifully? So the dry land appears. What happens up here? Nothing. It's only down here below the firmament. Okay, gathered together, and let the dry lands appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the waters were gathered together in the seas, and God said, it is good. Now, what happens next? Let the earth bring forth vegetation. Right? That doesn't look like trees, does it? We should make trees. But it's mostly grass to start out with. Right? And how did all these waters get here? You remember your creation? You remember your science, 8th grade science? No, the volcanoes rise. The volcanoes rise out of the waters. They create so much heat and steam, right, that the waters, clouds form, and the rain falls and creates the seas. Interesting similarity, right? We do know scientifically that the first plants actually started in the seas, little phytoplankton. But these are the mystics. This is 5,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, the mystics are describing what happened. So, so let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees yielding fruit, each according to its own kind. Why do we care about the seeds and according to its own kind? Anybody have an idea?
Individualized expressions. A corn will only be corn.
Yes. A seed, a corn, a tomato plant, a tomato seed, a sequoia seed is only going to grow into its own thing, right? It's only going to grow into whatever the seed is, the seed of, the fruit of, each according to its own kind. And the earth brought forth all of this lovely stuff, and God said it was good. And so this is the one that feels a little out of place, but we will give it to the mystics. So then God put the moon and the stars and the sun and the moon in the sky. Notice that it is still below the firmament and separated out day and night. The light to rule the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars also, and set them in the firmament, not up here in heaven, in the firmament, to rule over the day and the night. And God said it was good. And so now let's listen to the way the rest of it takes place. Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures. Go back to your 8th grade science. Where did life start? In the oceans. Bring forth swarms of creatures, and let birds fly above the earth, and the great sea animals, and the living creatures that move, with which the waters swarm. So we have the fish. We have fish and sea creatures. Don't laugh at my drawing. Not allowed to laugh at my drawing. We have the great whales, we have to make a little whale. Okay, I know you're not in kindergarten. It's okay. And be fruitful and multiply. Oh, and then we have the birds. My birds are green. Can't help it. That's what I have. Green birds. And then what happens? Be fruitful and multiply. And it was good. And then, and only then, we have the animals. I'm not going to draw animals. I'm not going to do it. We're just going to make a little animal here. We're not going to pretend that we even know what it is. I have no idea.
They probably came from.
So the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth according to their kind. And God said it was good, each of them ascending to their kinds, and everything that creeps upon the ground, right? So we have the light first, then we have the firmament, then we have the separation of the dry land appearing and the waters, and then we start vegetation, things in the sea, birds in the air, and finally animals. And ultimately, then, let us make man in our image. Notice it's in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, etc., etc., etc. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them. And God said, be fruitful and multiply. So we notice that in this passage, both God is plural and, of course, man is plural because it means humanity, male and female. Plural. And this is where we get made in our image and likeness. So we have to put little people here, little stick figure people. Don't laugh. You're not allowed to laugh. All right. So what's glaringly obvious here? Yes. Is it not exactly other than the stars and the moon, the sun and the moon, is this not exactly how we understand evolution to have happened? So anybody who tells you that evolution is not in the Bible has not read their creation stories. This is what it means to have mystical intuition. This is what the priests and the shamans in ancient times and what we today, and one of the reasons why we do our meditations and our contemplations of oneness and infinity is so that we ourselves can have this kind of a mystical intuition about what's going on, how did it all get here, how is it all working, right? And this story is thousands and thousands of years old. And other than the sun and the moon, they basically got the order correct. There was a deep understanding about how this all has evolved over time. And of course, it's good. It's good over and over and over again. We get out of the Jewish tradition the idea of original blessing. Everything is originally blessed. And it is only St. Augustine, as they say in the Catholic Church, the theologian and philosopher Augustine, who decided, because of the second creation story, that human beings were born fundamentally depraved because they had been kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And it is not until 400 CE that we get, long after Jesus, long after the Gospels are have been written, do we get the idea that humanity, that a child is born originally sinful and must therefore ever be fighting against its own nature. If you look at this ancient creation story, right, we see the mystics deeply understanding this is all good. Why? Because it's all individualized expressions of the whole. Notice that up here, there's no form. There's no form up here. So somewhere this impulse, God said, let there be, right? This impulse, we understand, comes from this unformed, what we would call spiritual reality. And we define that impulse as love. Why? Because it's given everything that's needed for manifestation, for itself, the light, which you can also see is everywhere. The waters are also everywhere, so that out of which everything is made is also everywhere. And it's all good, unformed and formed, right? So if we want to do what everybody else does and say, let us prove that the Bible says what we believe, then we can do this. And we have what we call our teaching symbol. The absolute spirit, the impulse of creation moving through this lawful cause and effect out and creating everything out of itself, this substance, into form. And those forms are good. And so from a new thought, from a science of mind point of view, right, this is what that creation story is pointing at. The way in which creation takes place. From the impulse, let there be, to the outpicturing of that impulse. And everything that we will study, as we study the science of mind, will be a way of testing out whether this is so. And a way of testing out whether we too can are in fact made in the image and likeness. So, and so at the end, when human beings are created, I won't go look for it, they are given dominion over physical creation, not power to rape and pillage and take everything, right? Dominion. Dominion basically means stewardship, right? Care for, and the ability to do the same creation. Let there be. Why? Because as human beings, we are made in the image and likeness of the whole. Made in the image and likeness of the one, in our image and likeness, right? So not as a super being, and all of humanity, let us make them in our image and likeness. And so we have dominion over our portion of life the way that the infinite has dominion over the whole thing, using this creative process. There you go. The creation story simplified. So I like this much better than what is in the book. And so that was why I thought we would revisit it from a slightly different point of view. And so let's stop there. Comments, questions, thoughts. Ryan, we're going to say good morning to you, and let's get our conversation started.
Well, mic drop, right? That was a fun experience there, Petra. Welcome, everybody. I'm Ryan. I'm the guy in the sky for those online, and the guy in real life, here in real life. And I appreciate all of you for joining us in community today, whether you're here on campus or all over the globe. I see some friends across the pond. Good evening to you as well, and thank you for joining us. And I love the fact that we've been keeping the iconic Richard on his toes today with the whiteboard. We got to make sure he's got plenty of cardio exercise throughout the day. So this is an interactive discussion, and we appreciate your thoughts or your comments, and a little bit of housekeeping rules for those who are in the room. Go ahead and just simply wave your hand in the air, and then myself or the iconic Richard will give you one of these handheld microphones, and that way you can ask your question. And for the folks who are joining us in Zoom today, go ahead and hit the raise your hand icon, and I'll bring you into the room. And for the folks that are watching us via Facebook, go ahead and put your questions and comments inside of the chat as well, and I can bring that into the room. And as always, for those who do put their questions and comments in the chat, I'd like to keep those anonymous, so that way we can continue to have a safe container for spiritual growth. And it looks like you befuddled everybody because I just see a lot of agreement going on. I do see we got Brenda here. Well, you guys are unbefuddling yourselves. We'll go ahead and turn it over to Brenda and see what she has to say. Brenda, you want to join the conversation?
Good morning, Brenda.
Good morning, Dr. Petra and community. Now, I'm going to make two comments. The first, for those who were listening a few weeks ago, when you look at different translations, going back to the Lamsa version, one of Dr. Petra's favorites, when humans were expelled from the garden, and out of God's compassion, he clothed them in skin. What were they before they were clothed in skin? They were beings of light. Since we discussed this before, the second point I'd like to bring in is an aspect of Jewish mysticism. Now, in Jewish mysticism, they question two things. Why is God plural and making us in plural image?
Mhm.
And the answer to that is Yahweh was only the God of the Jews. And when we were expelled from the garden, let each land and each peoples have their own God. Now, the mystical part of this is to save a life is to save all of humanity. To take a life is to kill all of humanity. A single human represents all life. And therefore, sorry, the little brain glitch there. In this Jewish mysticism of there only being one human representation we are each individualized of, each of us have our own singular path. That point at the bottom of your teaching symbol.
Mhm. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Brenda. So appreciate it. Thank you always for illuminating. It's always great to have slightly different points of view or more expanded points of view, right? Love that. And it is fascinating to me when you think about how many times these writings were redacted, were rewritten, were edited, were put together, how many pieces of these writings were thrown out, which is why the scholarly Bible I use has the Apocrypha in it, which are the books that were not included in the canon, which is now called the Bible. And also then we have the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Library that brought all kinds of other writings to the forefront. And in all of that, and then it was translated from Hebrew and Greek into Latin, and then Latin into German, and then German into English, and then the monks copying in candlelight, and God knows what happening, and then we have theologians that come along that say, oh no, that can't be right, and so then they insert passages based on their theology, all of that. And somehow we never lost in this original story the plural God and the idea that humanity as a whole was made, created them, right? And so it's fascinating to me that with all of the history of the versions and rewrites and translations and all of that little piece didn't get lost. And it really is something to spend time pondering. What is all of that about? And the fact that the statement is, and made in the image and likeness of God. Okay, now think about all the other previous ones. Seeds after their own kind, fish after their own kind, cattle after their own kind, made in the image and likeness of God, after it's their own kind. Yeah, things to ponder, right? Okay, I saw a hand here, and Ryan, I thought I saw your hand up as well. So let's come up here to in person, and then we'll go back online.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
Thanks, Richard. Right up here.
I'm Willie. I remember about 20 years ago, I think, we had a Bible scholar come here.
Rocco Erico.
Yes. And he said something that has stuck with me ever since about the translating and how it's done. And he said it had a lot to do with the culture of the people
Right, of course.
around
Right.
in the area who were, the Japanese and the Chinese save face. So there's exaggerations of the truth that go on. And that helped me to understand a couple of things in the Bible, like for example, raising Lazarus from the dead. The word, I think he said the word coma or the word dead meant coma or deep sleep or dead. It could have been anything, and he picked, and a translation was picked. That just
Right.
that helped me so much to understand a lot of this
Yes,
stuff.
and things are written in not only the culture but the idioms of the culture.
Exactly.
Right, and you try to translate "it's raining cats and dogs" into Eskimo.
Yeah.
Like, what? What do you mean it's raining cats and dogs? What? Really? Are you kidding? Right? That is right. It's a saying, and so all of that gets lost in translation, and people don't either understand or they don't. Right? And so, yeah, good. Thank you. And if you get the Science of Mind magazine, Rocco Errico still has a monthly column in the Science of Mind magazine. Okay, we're going to go to Ryan on out there online.
Yeah, so this question, I'm going to kind of paraphrase it a
Okay.
little bit because I see a couple of people asking it. So in the story of creation, first comes the darkness, and then out of that darkness comes to the light. And it asks, why do you suppose things evolve to a place of separation between polarities such as dark and light, good
Well-
or bad?
Well, in this case, the darkness is not dark versus light. In this case, the darkness is nothing. Right, and so if we look at the Hindu tradition, right, in the Hindu tradition, it's called the ultimate void from which all things spring. And so, again, we're hampered by culture and language. So the darkness here only means nothing. And out of nothing comes the first thing, and the first thing is actually the firmament. And the second thing is the first thing is actually the light, and the second thing is the firmament, right? And so what happens, just like in the ancient Eastern traditions, out of nothing comes something. And so the best description to the answer to that is the understanding that the Hindus talk about, that oneness has to move into multiplicity in physical form. Right? So notice, again, up here, there isn't anything. There's no thing. Nothing. Nothing, not empty, just nothing. No thing. What does that mean? No form. And we are so biologically enculturated, biologically designed to manage form. See, look, I just tripped over the wheel. And if I don't know that the wheel is there, I'm going to not only trip over it, I'm going to fall flat on my butt. So I have to separate myself from the wheel and the floor and the space so I can maneuver around it. Right? And the Hindus recognize, and they talk this, the Hindus recognize that the moment you have form, you have duality. So we might ask ourselves, in this absolute reality up here in which there is no thing, where's up and down? Right? It doesn't make sense. Hot and cold. The void, hot and cold, they don't make any sense. It's just no thingness. And out of that, then to create form, okay, so let's go back to our 8th grade algebra, 8th grade geometry. That is the beginning of form. This is something rather than nothing. So the quantum field is nothing, it's just waves. And when the quantum field is particularized into an individualized expression, you have something. But for that something to be something, right, it has to have duration in time, and then it has to have shape and form in space. And then we have to take up our understanding of the reality of it, right? And then this whole thing moves in time. And so we're now at least at the 4th dimensions. you have, so in this, right, you have a front and a back, you have a top and a bottom, you have sides. You can point to something which is part of the whole, but not something else. The top isn't the bottom unless you flip it over. This side isn't this side. I can say this point is different than this point. And so separation is required for creation. Otherwise, there's just this. Well, what is this? Well, this is the one, and it's the one, and it's oneing, and how nice the one. We can't even say nice, and then one is one, and then it's one, and well, how do you even talk about it? Because our language helps us catalog, separate, describe the very forms that we are constantly engaged with. And it's hard to get a hold of this unformed reality. And we think that, so we talk about it as spirit or divine or God or like all these, fundamentally religious language. One of my favorite things to call it is life, right? We say this whole thing, this whole thing is God, is the one. But the one without form is unexpressed. This is just being. This here is being. That's it. Being, beingness, ising. This is ising. That's what it's doing. It's ising. But it isn't experiencing because there's no form. So now, this is when your brain starts going on tilt. What do you mean? How can I think about something that has no form? If I can name it, it must have a form. Well, this is why it's so helpful, why it's a science of mind. It's so helpful always to go back to science. We could ask ourselves, where does the law of mathematics live? Everywhere? Nowhere? You can't point to this is the law of mathematics. You can't point to it. It is ubiquitous to the whole thing, right? And it's part of the way it works, but it doesn't live anywhere because it has no form until you express it in a mathematical equation. Oh, you want to see the law of mathematics? Now you see the law of mathematics because it's now in a form. But if I don't have this form, I don't have an eraser. If I don't have this form, the law of mathematics doesn't disappear. And it's everywhere present. Everybody can use it anytime, all the time, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, whether it's, 1,000 years in the past or 1,000 years in the future. And that's what we're getting a hold of here. Right? And besides the idea that there is a lawful creation after its kind, right? Always there's a lawful understanding of how the orderly lawfulness of this process is, and that there's a way of understanding it and using it that is what it means when we say we are made in the image and likeness. Separation. See, this work. So next week we'll do the second creation story, okay? We'll do the second creation story, and we will understand why separation is necessary for multiplicity and for individuation. And if you don't have multiplicity or individuation, you don't have any of this. This goes away. And then we just have beingness, which is only half of infinity. Because there's no expression. It's great, we have the law of mathematics, so what? Well, unless you want to figure out a fraction or how much your tomato juice is going to cost or whether or not you should get solar power, right? Then that's when your law of mathematics is used and expressed. Otherwise, it's really, to a certain extent, meaningless. So creation is is the other side of the coin of the impulse of life. And so, right, they're two sides of the same coin, unexpressed and expressed. And it's the wholeness. When we say the whole one life, we're talking about this and this. And too much spirituality all over the globe focuses always only on trying to get here, forgetting that this is the other half, which is why separation is required. And again, we'll do that next week. You'll get a pre-taste of the courses that I do on New Thought Metaphysics and the Old and the New Testament. Ryan.
And if you're just joining us, we're back with Art with Petra. And this is one of the
Kindergarten
beautiful
art.
masterpieces that she's laid out for us today. Now I have somebody here in the room, so I'm going to call on Tom. Tom, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and
Good morning,
join the conversation? Tom may have just been raising his hand to say hello. Well,
We're raising our hand back.
yeah, Tom, if you
Oh,
want
right.
to...
I heard him. Hello. Are you there, Tom?
Oh,
Yep. I hear you.
can you hear me?
Yes. Was there something you wanted to share?
I just wanted to share hello and to say hello.
Wonderful. Well, hello, and we're happy that you're with us.
Hope you have a good day.
Yay. Thank you. All right, we've got a comment in here in the room. Right over here, Glenda.
Glenda, and I think what I heard you say, Dr. Petra, is that the law is meaningless without form.
Correct.
And that really landed somewhere for me that opened something up. So, in my studying of this, I've been concentrating on the law. The law does this and the law does that. And understanding the law and
Hang on just a minute. Ryan, can you mute? Thank you. Go ahead, Glenda.
understanding the law and being cognizant of the law and using it consciously. But the law has to express. The law has to create. That's the impulse,
Correct.
right?
Right. That's correct. And so we would put up here, right? We would put up here life, love, law, right? Without this, it's unexpressed.
Right. So that reminds me that in my quest to understand and be cognizant of and exist consciously with the law, to know that it needs to express and consciously use that
Yes.
in my life.
Yes. 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 And too many people say, well, my life is fine. I don't need to co-create. I don't need to create anything. Everything is all right. Yeah. Well, but you're already creating everything. So why not play with it?
Why not use it consciously?
Why not use it consciously? Not only good for yourself, but good for humanity. Let's create healing of climate change. Let's create the wiping out of racism. Let's create all kinds of things that we can, because the law is constantly. So I would slightly rephrase what you said, Glenda. Mm-hmm. The law is always expressing. The question is, what impulse has it received to express?
Yes.
Right? And so here, the impulse is of life and love to become. But in life, in humanity, right, we might have a lot of garbage in the filter system, and we might be expressing things that are not in alignment with life and love, and then we have to clean that up so that the law can express something actually beautiful and wonderful or expanded or, good, however we want to see, however we want to do, understand that. And so, yes, it's always stunning to me how much people shy away from recognizing that we are always using the law, and it is always wanting to express, and it will take whatever we give it. So we're either giving it something consciously or we're just running on autopilot. I'm going to be talking about that in my talk here in 30 minutes.
Cool.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, last comment, then I'm getting the wrap-up signal from Ryan.
So
No.
I think this is where we spend a lot of time waiting for a life, love, and law to drop down what we should be doing instead of us impressing upon the life, love, and love, because there's nothingness up there. There's no thing there. And so what we impress upon the impulse, what we impress upon the law gives back to us in some kind of way. In other words,
Yes,
we can't
right.
just
So
sit and wait for God
So-
to drop it out of the sky.
yes. So we, as made in the image and likeness of the divine, we are not here. We are not. We are made in the image and likeness of God. This is a picture of us. Oh, you have to come to my talk in 30 minutes. This is a picture of us. And yes, we're waiting for this to drop in, forgetting that we are here and here and here. That we're co-creating in our own lives. That's what dominion means. We have dominion over our physical experience and creation and expression because we are also being. We're also a place where beingness is expressing, made in the image and likeness. And so what do we love? What impulse are we giving to it? And when our impulse is aligned with this impulse, man, there's just nothing stopping it. Right? I might love chocolate, and the universe is like, okay, it's a little too much chocolate, but I keep, my impulse is chocolate over and over and over again, right? And then my body doesn't feel so great. But when my impulse is healthy eating, healthy experience, loving myself and my body, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, right now, love and love are aligned, boom. There's nothing standing in the way. And we keep waiting, well, whatever spirit wants. This wants for us what we want for ourselves because we are this as well. We are made in the image and likeness of the One, each after their own kind. I know. Oh, God. Now, does this mean we're running the universe? No, it does not mean we're running the universe. We do not have dominion over the universe. That is the infinite's job. But we have dominion over that portion of creation that is ours to be engaged in, as large as we can imagine that to be. Okay, that is the creation story simplified. So carry on with your reading. You can read a little bit more, but we will go back and we'll finish the conversation up next week. We'll talk about the second creation story because it does answer that question about separation and why that's so important. So thanks for hanging in there. Make sure you bring lots of coffee tomorrow, next Sunday morning. Have your cup of coffee before you join us, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.